My talk today will be about what we call ancient DNA. It means the retrieval and analysis of the genetic information from ancient materials and fossil remains.
Scientists just made a discovery that sounds like science fiction. They found matching DNA in two completely different civilizations that lived 12,000 years apart. Think about that, the same genetic material separated by thousands of generations. This groundbreaking find is shaking the scientific world and raising huge questions about our ancestors. Could time have played tricks on human evolution? What hidden connections link these distant peoples? Join us as we explore this amazing genetic puzzle, a discovery no one expected. It begins in a quiet laboratory that feels far removed from ancient worlds, with no ruins, no myths, no carved stones, only soft lights, sealed rooms, and machines that work without rest. This is where scientists study the deep past, not by digging in the ground, but by breaking tiny pieces of bone and teeth down into data, hoping those fragments still remember where they came from. The work is meant to be ordinary. Ancient DNA research usually moves slowly and carefully, comparing old samples to see how humans changed over long stretches of time. Most results are predictable. Patterns drift gently. Differences grow with age. The past behaves the way it is supposed to. On this day, nothing feels special at first. Samples are logged, cleaned, and prepared, each one coming from carefully dated burial sites. These remains are old, fragile, and precious, so every step follows strict rules. The goal is simple and safe: map genetic changes across time and fill in small gaps in the story of early humans. The computers begin processing the data, turning ancient fragments into readable sequences. Lines of code scroll across the screen, familiar and expected. Then something small appears, easy to miss, a genetic marker that looks strangely familiar. At first, it barely registers. Ancient DNA often produces strange signals. Time damages it. Soil contaminates it. Even the cleanest labs fight against tiny errors. The natural response is calm repetition. The test is run again. The system resets. No one is worried, but the marker appears again. This still does not cause alarm. Mistakes are common enough to feel boring. A mislabeled file, a trace left behind by handling, a software hiccup, any of these could explain it. The sample is cleaned again. The process begins from the very start, slower this time, more carefully. The result does not change. The marker remains, clear and exact, sitting in the data as if it belongs there. That is when curiosity begins to replace routine. Someone checks the database to see if the sequence matches anything already known. It does. The match leads to another ancient population, one that should be far removed in time. Not a few generations, not even a few centuries. Thousands of years stand between them. Enough time for climates to shift, ice to melt, and entire ways of life to vanish. The room grows quieter. This kind of match should not exist. Over deep time, DNA drifts. It mutates. It fades. Identical sequences are not meant to survive unchanged across such a vast stretch of history. That idea sits at the foundation of genetic science. The scientists slow everything down. More samples are pulled, not just from the same site, but from others linked to the same civilization. Teeth are favored because they protect DNA better than bone. Each new piece is treated as if it might break the mystery open or finally make it disappear. The marker appears every time. Concern replaces curiosity. Excitement does not arrive because excitement suggests celebration, and this feels like trouble. The team begins checking everything that could explain an error. Storage conditions are reviewed, tools are examined, lab records are searched. Nothing stands out. To be certain, the samples are sent away to other laboratories, far from the original site, to teams who are given no context and no expectations. This is how science protects itself from bias and imagination. If the result is false, this is where it should fall apart. It does not. The same genetic marker appears again, clean and unchanged, as if time never touched it. The odds of this happening by chance are calculated, and the numbers are so small they are almost meaningless. Now the discovery feels heavy and impossible, because if this DNA is real, then something from a very ancient world crossed a stretch of time it should not have survived. It stayed intact while everything around it changed, and that means the past may not be as distant or as silent as we once believed. Two civilizations that should never connect. Once the shock of the discovery begins to settle, the scientists turn their attention to the people behind the DNA. If this match is real, then the answer must be hiding in the lives of two very different civilizations. So they begin to study them closely side by side, even though history says they should never stand together. The first civilization belongs to a time so old it feels almost unreal. These people lived near the end of the Ice Age, when the world was colder and far less friendly. Massive ice sheets covered large parts of the land. Seasons were harsh and unpredictable. Survival was a daily struggle. These people did not build cities or monuments. They moved with the land, following animals and edible plants. Their tools were simple, made from stone, bone, and wood. Everything they owned had to be carried or easily replaced. They left behind only faint traces, campsites, fire pits, and scattered bones buried deep in the earth. Their remains are found far below the surface, locked inside layers of soil that date back thousands of years. According to everything science understands, their DNA should look ancient and worn, full of changes caused by time. It should feel distant, like a faded echo of early humanity. The second civilization comes from a much later chapter of human history. The climate is warmer, the ice has retreated, the land is more stable. These people have settled lives. They grow food, raise animals, and live in permanent communities. Their world has structure and rhythm. They build homes meant to last. They follow traditions passed down through generations. There are signs of leadership, belief systems, and shared identity. Compared to the earlier group, they appear advanced, not just in tools, but in how they organize their lives. On paper, these two civilizations could not be more different. They are separated by thousands of years, but also by geography. They lived on different continents, surrounded by different landscapes, plants, and animals. Their daily lives followed completely different rules. Nothing about their environment suggests contact or connection. There are no shared tools, no similar designs, no matching symbols. Their art does not overlap. Their burial practices do not resemble one another. Even their diets tell different stories. Archaeology draws a clear line between them. Human migration, as currently understood, does not explain this connection. People move slowly across the land, adapting to new places over long periods. Each movement changes them a little. After enough time passes, only soft genetic similarities remain. Clean, identical DNA does not survive this process. Yet here it is. The DNA ignores everything the ground is saying. It does not care about distance or time. It connects these two civilizations directly, without explanation or apology. It behaves less like a coincidence and more like a signature, something deliberate and precise. The scientists search desperately for a safe explanation. They explore the idea of unknown migration routes. Perhaps small groups traveled farther than expected. Perhaps contact happened briefly and left little trace. These ideas sound reasonable at first, but they fall apart under scrutiny. Even short contact leaves marks. A copied tool, a borrowed habit, a shared style. Humans are good at leaving evidence behind, even when they do not mean to. Here, there is nothing. The soil remains silent. This silence becomes disturbing. The lack of connection in the archaeological record makes the DNA feel louder, almost too loud. It stands alone, unsupported, refusing to blend into the story built from bones and stones. That is when a quiet question begins to form in the background. What if these civilizations were not meant to connect directly? What if both inherited something from an even older source? A forgotten chapter that sits before both of them. This thought feels dangerous. It suggests that history may be missing an entire layer, a culture or population that existed long before the Ice Age ended and left almost nothing behind. Rising seas, shifting land, and time itself could have erased most physical evidence, leaving only DNA as a witness. No one rushes to say this out loud. Ideas like this sit uncomfortably within modern history. They blur the clean lines people rely on. They suggest that human civilization may be older, more complex, and more fragile than we want to believe. For now, the scientists keep their focus narrow. They describe what they can prove. Two civilizations, vastly separated. No visible link except for one quiet piece of DNA that refuses to agree. the data that refuse to go away. After the two civilizations are laid side by side, the scientists expect the mystery to weaken. Strange results often fade when tested hard enough. Errors usually reveal themselves once pressure is applied. This time, the opposite happens. The more the data is tested, the stronger it becomes. The team decides to start again from the very beginning, as if the discovery never happened. New samples are selected with extra care. They come from different burial sites, different digs, and different storage collections. Bones are chosen, but teeth are chosen even more often because teeth protect DNA better than almost anything else over long stretches of time. The lab work becomes almost ritual-like. Rooms are sealed, air is filtered, tools are cleaned again and again until there is no doubt left. Ancient DNA work already demands caution, but now every step is treated as if one mistake could collapse the entire finding. When the results return, the same genetic marker appears. There is a strange feeling in the room, not excitement, not fear, but something heavier. Relief mixes with dread. Relief because the process worked exactly as designed. Dread because the answer did not change at all. Still, no one jumps to conclusions. The samples are sent out again, this time to labs far away, run by teams who are given no story and no expectation. They are told only to test and report what they see. This is how science protects itself from imagination and bias. If the result is false, it will not survive this step. It survives easily. The same marker appears again, sharp and clear, as if it belongs exactly where it sits. Different machines, different hands, different environments. The result remains unchanged. At this point, the data begins to feel stubborn, almost defiant. It does not bend to doubt. It does not soften with repetition. It simply stays. The scientists then widen the comparison. They line this DNA up against thousands of other ancient samples collected from across the world. They expect to find close relatives, partial matches, or at least something similar. That would make sense. That would be comforting. They find nothing. This exact sequence appears only in these two civilizations and nowhere else in the growing genetic record. It does not show gradual change. It does not branch out. It does not leave descendants scattered across regions. It appears suddenly, remains perfect, then disappears again. This behavior does not match how human genetics normally works. DNA usually leaves trails. Even rare traits tend to echo faintly through nearby populations or later generations. This one behaves differently. It feels isolated, protected, almost preserved. The researchers begin to feel like the rules they learned no longer apply. Genetic drift should blur patterns over time. Mutation should add noise. Mixing should soften edges. None of that happens here. The more data they gather, the fewer safe explanations remain. Some return to the idea of contamination, but every control test comes back clean. There is no modern DNA interference. The samples show clear signs of age. Others suggest coincidence, but the mathematics refuses to cooperate. The chances are too small to ignore. Each comfortable answer collapses the moment it is examined closely. This is when the tone of the research changes. The work becomes quieter. Fewer people are involved. Discussions move from open spaces to closed rooms. No one wants to be the first to say what this might mean, because if the data is telling the truth, then something carried this DNA across a vast stretch of time without leaving a visible trail. It did not spread naturally. It did not fade gradually. It moved or survived in a way no model explains. The data keeps pointing in one direction, toward a past that is not simple and not neat. And the most unsettling part is this. The data is finished arguing. It has done its job. It has repeated itself enough times to stand on its own. Now it is waiting for someone to decide what kind of history could possibly make sense of it. The 12,000-year problem. Once the data becomes impossible to ignore, the scientists face a bigger issue. The problem is no longer whether the DNA match is real. The problem is time. A stretch of time so large that it should erase almost everything. According to modern science, 12,000 years is not a small gap. It is enough time for climates to change, ice sheets to melt, and entire ways of life to disappear. It is enough time for languages to be born and die, for cultures to rise and fall, and for human genetics to slowly shift in quiet but powerful ways. DNA does not like to stay still. Over long periods, small changes build up. Random mutations appear. Genetic traits spread, weaken, or vanish. This slow process is called genetic drift, and it is one of the main tools scientists use to track time. The older the separation, the weaker the genetic connection should be. But in this case, the connection is not weak at all. The DNA match between the two civilizations looks fresh, almost recent, as if the clock stopped ticking for this one piece of genetic code. There is no blur, no fade, no damage. It sits there untouched, ignoring 12,000 years like they never happened. This breaks the timeline scientists depend on. Migration models say people move slowly, step by step, spreading outward from their homelands. Each movement created new genetic mixes. After enough time, no clean line should remain. Yet this DNA behaves like it jumped across the timeline instead of traveling through it. The scientists test the age of the samples again. The dating methods agree. The older remains truly belong to the end of the Ice Age. The later remains come from a much more recent period. The gap is real and unavoidable. There is no missing chapter in the middle. This forces an uncomfortable thought. If the timeline is correct and the DNA is correct, then something else must be wrong. Either history is missing a major event, or human movement was far more complex than anyone admits. Some researchers wonder if a small group survived in isolation for thousands of years, protecting this DNA from change. But isolation usually creates more mutation, not less. Others suggest repeated contact, but there is no sign of travel or exchange between the two worlds. Every explanation bends until it breaks. The problem with 12,000 years is that it leaves no room for accidents. Errors might explain small gaps, but not one this deep. To accept the match is to accept that something crossed this stretch of time in a way that left no visible trace. This is where tension enters the room. The discovery does not just challenge one theory, it threatens the structure of early human history. If the timeline can fail here, it can fail elsewhere. And that idea makes people nervous. So the language stays careful. The papers avoid bold claims. Words like anomaly and unresolved appear again and again, but behind those soft words is a hard truth. 12,000 years should have erased this DNA. It did not. And if time itself could not destroy it, then the past may be far closer than anyone is ready to admit. The theories no one likes to say out loud. When the timeline refuses to make sense, the scientists do what humans always do when facts stop fitting neatly. They begin to wonder carefully. These are not ideas meant for headlines or conferences. These are ideas shared in private notes and late-night conversations, the kind that make people uneasy. The first idea is the safest one, even though it still feels strange. Maybe there was a lost population that survived far longer than anyone knows. A small group living in isolation, passing down the same DNA generation after generation, hidden from the rest of the world, protected by geography or climate. But this idea has problems. Isolation usually makes DNA change faster, not slower. Small groups develop unique traits over time. They drift away from the original pattern. They do not freeze in place for thousands of years. So this theory starts to wobble the moment it is examined closely. Another idea follows. What if the DNA did not survive straight through time but was carried forward in steps? A bloodline that appeared, disappeared, then reappeared, not spread widely, not mixed freely, just enough to stay alive, but never enough to leave clear traces. This idea feels better, but it still leaves too many holes. Where are the camps? Where are the tools? Where are the bones in between? History leaves marks, even faint ones, and here there are none. Then comes the idea that makes people shift in their seats. What if both civilizations inherited this DNA from something even older? A source civilization that existed before the Ice Age ended. A culture advanced enough to spread people or knowledge across regions, then vanish almost completely. Not destroyed in one moment, but slowly erased by climate change, rising seas, and time. This idea sounds like myth, like fantasy, yet it solves a problem nothing else can. It explains why the DNA appears suddenly. It explains why it looks untouched, and it explains why there is nothing in between. Still, no one wants to embrace it fully. There is another idea, even harder to accept. What if movement across the world happened in ways we do not yet understand? not slow wandering, not simple migration, but intentional travel, purposeful movement across great distances at a time when humans were supposed to be simple and limited. This idea threatens the image of early humans taught in textbooks. It suggests skill, planning, and knowledge that should not exist yet, and that makes it dangerous. None of these theories sit comfortably. Each one pushes against the edges of accepted history. Each one asks for a past that is more complex, more capable, and more mysterious than the clean story people prefer. So these ideas remain unofficial. They live in footnotes, in unfinished papers, in thoughts that never quite make it onto the page. Because once a theory crosses a certain line, it stops being science people applaud and starts being science people avoid. Yet the DNA does not care about comfort. It keeps pointing backward, farther than expected, deeper than allowed, toward a past that does not want to stay buried. And the longer the scientists look at it, the harder it becomes to pretend those uncomfortable ideas are not waiting just beneath the surface. What the DNA will not explain. By now, the DNA has spoken clearly, but it has also gone quiet in the most frustrating way. It gives a strong connection, yet it refuses to explain how that connection happened. This is where the mystery deepens, because science depends on trails, and here the trail simply ends. The scientists turn to archaeology, hoping the ground will offer answers that the DNA cannot. Usually, when people move or connect, they leave signs behind. Tools change shape, burial styles blend, art patterns repeat. Even small contact leaves fingerprints in the soil. But here, there is nothing. The older civilization shows one way of life: simple tools, rough shelters, and survival focused on hunting and gathering. The later civilization shows a different world: farming, settled communities, and signs of social order. Their tools do not match. Their symbols do not overlap. Their building styles do not echo one another. It is like two separate stories written in the same book but never touching the same page. The scientists search harder. They compare stone tools in detail. They examine burial positions. They look at diet through chemical traces in bones. Everything points to separation, not connection. No shared habits, no shared traditions, no shared daily life. And yet the DNA says otherwise. This is deeply unsettling because DNA is personal. It lives inside the body. It passes from parent to child. It does not jump easily. For it to move, people must move. But archaeology shows no sign of that movement. Some suggest that the connection was brief, a short moment lost to time. But even brief contact usually leaves something behind: a tool copied, a habit borrowed, a burial done differently. Here, there is nothing at all. Others wonder if the connection happened through a group that left no lasting trace, a people who passed through like shadows. But humans are not shadows. They eat, they camp, they bury their dead. They leave marks whether they mean to or not. The silence becomes part of the mystery. The DNA also refuses to explain the purpose. Why did this marker survive so cleanly? Why this specific piece endured while others faded? It does not seem random. It seems chosen. Though science struggles with words like that, if it were just one sample, it could be ignored. But it is not. The match appears again and again, steady and unchanged, like a quiet signal repeating through time. The scientists compare this to other strange genetic finds. Most anomalies fade with more data. This one sharpens. The more it is studied, the more alone it becomes. No relatives, no variations, just presence, then absence. This creates a troubling gap. History is meant to flow, one chapter into the next. Here there is a missing bridge. The DNA stands on one side, archaeology on the other, and between them is empty space. That empty space is uncomfortable. It forces a question no one likes to ask. What if some parts of human history left no physical trace? What if knowledge, movement, or people passed through moments that did not fossilize well? What if the ground only remembers what it can hold? The DNA suggests connection without evidence. Archaeology demands evidence without connection. Both are trusted sciences. Both are telling different stories. And neither is willing to bend. This is where the discovery stops being just about genetics. It becomes about limits. Limits of tools. Limits of records. Limits of what survives time. The DNA has opened a door, but it refuses to show what is on the other side. It tells us something happened, but not how, not why, and not who was responsible. And that may be the most unsettling part of all. Because if human history can hide something this large with so little trace, then the past may be far quieter and far stranger than anyone ever imagined. The silence that followed. After months of testing, checking, and rechecking, the discovery reaches a strange place. It is no longer new. It is no longer fragile. The DNA result stands firm, and that is when something unexpected happens. Things slow down, not because the mystery is solved, but because it is not. The scientists realize they are holding something that does not fit neatly into the world of modern research. Big discoveries are welcome only when they expand the story gently. This one does not. It pushes too hard. The papers are written carefully, very carefully. Strong words are removed. Clear conclusions are softened. Instead of bold claims, the language circles around the problem. The discovery is described as unresolved. Further study is needed. More data is required. This is normal in science, but this time it feels different. Some studies take longer to publish. Others never move forward at all. Funding requests meet quiet resistance. Review boards ask for extra proof, then extra proof again. No one says no directly. They simply delay. The reason is simple. This discovery does not just raise a question. It threatens balance. If identical DNA can exist across 12,000 years with no visible bridge, then some of the timelines taught for generations may be incomplete. That does not mean they are wrong, but it means they are missing something. And missing pieces make people uncomfortable. The scientists involved feel it. Conferences pass without mention. Conversations change tone. Some researchers quietly step away, choosing safer projects. Others continue working, but only at the edges, careful not to step too far outside accepted boundaries. This does not mean the discovery disappears. It simply moves into the background, living in technical reports, data tables, and footnotes few people read. It exists, but without a spotlight. And yet, the questions do not go away. If the DNA is real, then human history may not be a straight path from simple to complex. It may be a loop, a rise, a fall, and a rise again. Civilizations may have appeared, vanished, and left behind only faint traces inside the human body. This idea is powerful and dangerous at the same time. It suggests that progress is not guaranteed, that knowledge can be lost, that advanced cultures could exist and disappear without monuments strong enough to survive time. Stone crumbles, wood rots, only DNA endures. The silence around the discovery does not mean rejection. It means hesitation. It means waiting. Waiting for more evidence. Waiting for a safer explanation. Waiting for time to dull the sharp edge of the question. But time does not dull DNA. New technology continues to improve. More ancient genomes are being mapped every year. More bones are being tested. More data is entering the record. And with every new sample, there is a quiet chance that the same marker will appear again. If it does, the silence will become harder to maintain. Some scientists believe this discovery is just the beginning, that other connections will surface, that patterns will emerge linking distant cultures in ways never expected. Others fear that opening this door will lead to conclusions they cannot control. So the field stands still, caught between curiosity and caution. For now, the story remains unfinished, not because it lacks answers, but because the answers may demand a rewrite of things long considered settled. That kind of change does not happen quickly. It never has. Still, the DNA remains quiet and unchanged. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It simply exists as proof that something passed through time in a way history did not record. And that leaves us with a final, uneasy thought. If science is only as complete as the evidence we are willing to accept, then how much of the past is still waiting for us to be brave enough to listen? If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.